In today's episode, we will look at what it takes to ramp up a new school, what ingredients are necessary to ensure your student and program success, and what stakeholder engagement looks like. You will walk away with some key strategies to implement, whether you're a new school or an existing one. Let's talk about holistic success. Hi everyone, I'm Kelly Dore, co-founder and VP of Science and Innovation at Acuity Insights. Welcome to this episode of the Holistic Success Show. Our guest today is Dr. Brigham Willis, founding dean at the University of Texas at Tyler School of Medicine. Dr. Willis has worked to oversee the development and implementation of a new curriculum and vision for the future of medical education and healthcare in East Texas. He previously served as Senior Associate Dean of Medical Education at the University of California, Riverside School of Medicine, and has been a practicing pediatrician for about 20 years. His rich experience creates opportunities for us to cover a wide variety of topics in our conversation today. Dr. Willis, welcome and thanks for joining me.
Kelly, thank you so much for being here, and make sure you call me Brig. I prefer that. But
absolutely, Brig. No, we've known each other too long.
My pleasure, and happy to talk about what we're doing in East Texas.
Well, all right. With that, let's get started. So you took on a big project when you moved to Tyler, a really exciting one, and something that was fundamentally so important to the community. What's it like to set up a completely new medical education entity like UT Tyler Medicine?
Well, the short answer is it's a whirlwind. There's chaos every single day, but a good kind of chaos. I mean, I think what we're trying to do is really serve an amazing mission and vision, right? The state of Texas and all the folks who put together the funding and the infrastructure, everything that was needed for the medical school to come together, from Kirk Calhoun, our president, Kevin Eltife, the Board of Regents, everybody. They had one goal, which was to address the health disparities in a very rural, very underserved region of East Texas. So when we're putting together the school, we try and message every single day that that's our mission. And that informs everything we're doing, from the type of people who want to be on board, how we design our curriculum, how we design our programming. So whirlwind, yes, but incredibly inspiring, right? Because every day we get up and we're trying to do something to make a big difference in the lives of people who need it. And obviously there's a million functional things you need to do starting a medical school. Number one was recruitment of a team. Once I was in place, we had to get a team together in 16 months of the entire educational team, everything we needed from an administrative standpoint. We had about 3 months to set up our entire admissions system. Because that's when the admissions was going to open. Just details like that were very, very challenging. But what I found really inspiring was the excitement of the people who joined our team to do something new, to do something innovative in service of a really important mission. So for me, a lot of chaos, a lot of details, but really exciting.
And you feel that passion when you talk to anybody who's working at UT Tyler. I can say, having had the chance to come a couple of times, which has been great, I get so excited every time I talk to any of your team because they're so passionate. And it's really clear that you put mission first, and mission is behind sort of everything that you do. And it really makes a difference.
Yeah, it really is. And we're a little bit lucky. It's a challenge having a brand new med school. A lot of stuff that is just there at med schools we didn't have. We had to build it. But we're lucky to start from scratch in a way, because everyone who joined the team is on board with our vision of the curriculum, our vision of how admissions should be structured, how everything should go to make this the best school to fit rural East Texas that it can be. So we are lucky in that respect that people who came on board really are excited about what we're trying to do.
Now, given that you were setting up this new entity, you talked about, the 3 whole months you had to set up an admissions process. It seems like a lifetime, really.
Oh my gosh.
But I know you also took, a lot of opportunity, and you've recently presented at meetings on it, but you took the opportunity to rethink your admissions process differently. Maybe you could share a little bit about what you did and how you thought about it differently, given you only had such a tight time frame.
Yeah, the tight time frame, I guess in a way was a benefit, because we could just say, well, this is how the system's going to be. And it does come, we've talked about admissions for many years. And I leaned on the expertise of some really amazing people. Dr. Sunny Nakai, a colleague from a previous institution, was a huge part of the foundational theory and practicality of how we set up the admissions for our school. But we started with regional enrollment management. That's kind of the base theory behind what we're trying to do. And that's getting people from East Texas to join our med school and keep them here. Because the whole point of having the medical school in East Texas was to serve East Texas and produce physicians for the region. And if we have people come in, even though they might be the best student from Dallas or Houston, if they just leave right after, it serves no purpose. No, it does not serve the mission. So we leaned in extremely heavily on recruiting students from East Texas. And so that was number one. We wanted to have a geographic ties of hopefully all of our students, so they're committed and want to serve in the region after they finish. And then we kind of rethought, well, if we want students from East Texas, what kind of students are we talking about? We're talking about students who are committed to their community, who've done a lot of community service, have done leadership, really want to serve underserved communities. We have really so many health disparities in the region. And so what does that look like? And what it looks like to me, and what Sunny's idea was right-sizing the academics, not reducing the academics, but right-sizing them and doing a true implementation of the holistic review of a candidate, right? So we tried to make equally important other characteristics in addition to the academics. People sometimes want to say, well, you're saying academics aren't important. That's not what I'm saying. They're equally important to other characteristics of choosing physicians. And I see this when I traveled all over East Texas to Rotary clubs, different groups. And I asked the question at every single group, what are the characteristics of a physician that you want to see? And when you go through that exercise with people in the community, they say empathy, humanism, communication, listening, bedside manner, caring. 9 out of the 10 things have to do with who the person is and not how smart they are. They need to be smart, obviously, but we also need to evaluate and look at who people are. I think for too long we leaned only on these very gross metrics of intellectual ability. And so we're lucky in med school admissions, I think, where you have so many applicants for so few spots that you're going to have academically amazing people. But we also need to equally evaluate who the people are. So in addition to where they're from, meaning that probably is going to indicate a bigger willingness to serve that region, we have pretty detailed indices and metrics for looking at how much leadership, community service. We use the situational judgment test, the Casper, to look at people's humanistic characteristics. And we try to balance all of those things and get a true picture of who people are. And to do a better job of that, and one of the more unique things about our admissions process that we're really proud of, is that we blind the admissions committee to a wide array of characteristics that should have no bearing on whether they're going to be a good physician. So our admissions committee doesn't know the name, race, they don't get to see the photo, they don't get to know the gender of the applicant, to eliminate all those upfront biases that we know are so prevalent. And then, so what they're evaluating the candidate on is their accomplishments and their abilities and their reasons for wanting to come to the medical school, and their MMI results and the multiple mini interview results and all the things that really tell you about who the person is. And interestingly, we actually don't let the committee see their MCAT or GPA scores either, or their GPA, because too much time, I think, in my experience in decades of admissions, is debating whether a 3.75 from this school was better than the 3.8 from another. It's totally meaningless data in terms of. So we developed an academic prep index that is based on AAMC data for your likelihood to finish medical school and pass boards and all that kind of stuff. And so we give basically a green check mark for academic prep and ask the committee, okay, now that you know they're going to succeed, what is going to make this person a great doctor? So all those things, I think, were really a combination of ways of looking at candidates that I've been thinking about for a very long time, and great thinkers like Sonny helped us make it a reality. And we did great. We got an amazing first class of all East Texas kids. I call them kids because I'm old. They're amazing young professionals, but who are just amazing. And they had MCAT scores and GPAs that were amazing, but they're also amazing people. So
I love that because, again, you hear sort of the mission first in what you're doing. And I think other schools can take that, whether they're a new school or an existing school. It's sort of, where is your mission in your admissions process? And really thinking through the line of not just bringing good folks into the program, but graduating folks who are going to be excellent physicians and really serve your mission. I think that's a beautiful story.
Yes. And the key thing, the other way too, is that you're finding students who are at your school because of the mission, right? Who they choose you also. And that's what we're looking for. And as evidence of that, we had, in Texas, we have a match for medical student admissions, and the usual number of students you have to rank to get a class is usually 2.5 to 3 times your class size. And we only had to go down to 44 on our list for 40. So we had a 90% yield in so 90% of the people that we gave offers to kept the offer all the way through to the end. Now, part of that was free tuition. I'm going to say that we do have a donor who pays for tuition, but I don't. A lot of schools have done free tuition for their first classes, and I'm not trying to brag or anything, but I think it's because we picked students who, on the front end, were in it to serve the East Texas region, and so we wanted them, and they wanted us at the same time. So we're really proud of that we have committed students from the region who are just incredible people.
And I also imagine bringing in students who are committed to your mission also, reinforces that amongst your faculty and staff and all the other folks involved. It's not just that they're in it for that. They actually see them committing to the mission and all of that stuff.
That's exactly right. And the community support has been even higher once they saw we walked the walk, right? Because when I first got here, who's this guy from out of state coming in and trying to start a med school here? And I don't think they really believed that we would get all East Texas kids. And when they see these students who come from the small towns that they also are from, the support has just been growing, I think, for the school, because I think they see that it's here to serve the mission that it was intended to serve.
I think one of the other critical things I heard you say, Brig, is not just your faculty and your staff and your students, but that community attachment. Because I think that's what a lot of schools are searching for too, is, really making sure that the community feels as invested in them as they are to that. And when you show that through your mission, it creates that opportunity for connection.
Yeah, it's absolutely critical. I get made fun of for this term, but I like to say we're a community embedded school. I know everyone says community engagement, and yes, we want a community engagement. I think everything we do should be with an eye toward the community and how do we involve them in a value add kind of way. And because the last thing we want is the ivory tower kind of a deal. We're here for this community. We want to show that.
Absolutely. And you need them to be in lockstep with you to do that. So I want to take us back to, the many, many, probably hundreds of things you had to consider in setting up the new school. What were some of your top considerations as you set up the sort of software infrastructure for the school, or sort of thought it through? Because again, you had the chance to start from the scratch, start from beginning, and think through what you wanted. Was there anything you considered in that?
The biggest consideration is having systems that allow you to implement an ongoing, comprehensive and strong QI process, right? And that's what I've seen at so many schools. When you start or implement things and don't have that thought toward how are we going to improve and how are we going to review what we're doing moving forward, it's a mess, right? When you try and go backwards and establish that. So, I think making sure that you are collecting data from day one, right? And that you're going to be able to go back and improve, especially with a new school. I told the students this when I was recruiting. I'm like, you guys are beta testers, right? You got to be innovators to come to this new school. We're going to need to fix some stuff, and we're not going to hit 100% on everything. But you have to have the systems in place to do that. So I was lucky enough to get uh, incredible people like Dr. Sue Cox, who's our accreditation lead, who does amazing work with the LCME, has started up, worked at UT Austin School of Medicine. Gary Begdaligan from University of North Carolina is one of the leaders in the field of assessment. Just the people that we ed on board to set up the systems where we could get it set up. So I mean, obviously you need like a good learning management system and the platforms for ed tech and all that kind of stuff. But I think the key thing is having the ability to collect and utilize data to get better. Right? So we all have to get better.
Absolutely. And it sounds, that sounds true, whether you're starting a new med school, implementing a new curriculum, or whenever you're making change. I'm a big fan of collecting data to test the intended consequences you want to have and maybe the unintended, both positive and negative that you might have.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even like, curriculum mapping has been really key for us. We have a very innovative curriculum also. It's all flipped classroom, active learning, case-based. A lot of schools are moving to this, but since we were a new school, we were able to go like wholly into that and implement a really innovative curriculum. But we got to make sure it's working, right? So, and then in terms of the curriculum mapping, also it's actually helped with the students because we're like, okay, everything on your boards, look, we're going to hit it all. You can show them the map. You can show them where everything is coming so that they're not worried, it's not a classic system. Are we going to miss something? So there's a lot of different reasons. I think having comprehensive data on content and performance of curriculum is foundational when you're starting up.
Absolutely. And maybe, you said you have your first cohort in. I know it's early days still, but do you have some learnings from your experience preparing for them so far and getting them ready that might help other people as they're looking to make change or start a new program?
So one of the biggest things is we did recruit a lot of kids from East Texas, a lot of first generation college students. And so then they're coming to our med school with a totally different way of learning. It's extremely independent and self-directed and a lot of unique things that they haven't really been through before. And so making sure that infrastructure and support services are there to give them the tools to be able to learn how to study in this new thing, set up their own self-directed learning study plans and how that interacts with the curriculum. And we try to provide as sort of multi-sourced and multimodal content for the students as possible, because everything we do is flipped classroom. Like if I teach respiratory physiology and I record videos of me with slides and here's the content and all this stuff, but they don't actually even have to look at my slides ever. The same content is in our online curriculum. We have a comprehensive electronic curriculum they can access. They could go all over the internet and get the same content so that's not the key, but giving them as many different ways to access the information so that when they then go and do their self-learning and the application, which is what the only thing they do when they're in person is the application aspect with cases and simulation and problem sets and all that. They're able to do that with the background. But I think the support services, especially for our type of student population, are key.
Well, and I think, I would say yes, absolutely for your student population, but I think the more schools are really looking to reinforce diverse pathways for folks to come into, both higher education and med ed specifically, the more we need to think about how we support those students all the way through. It's one thing to bring folks in, but we want them to succeed at the end of the day.
Exactly. Yeah. What are we doing if we get them in, but then they can't access their curriculum or succeed? It's not.
Absolutely.
And that's, if you look at our data too, we had I'm forgetting the exact number, but something like a third of our students are first generation in college. Over half of them, I believe, were first generation in any kind of grad school. So it's a different, I remember I was first generation in my medical school and it was a total culture shock. And back in the good old days, they had no support system. So we want to make sure that is better now.
Exactly. Yeah, we know better so we can do better in terms of supporting our students. And how are you feeling sort of, looking back, you've done so much work to engage stakeholders, as you talked about, going to Rotary clubs, everything from probably very, very small town meetings to talking to big donors, to engaging individual members of the community in your conversation, coming, maybe not from East Texas. So how do you feel that, you really shared with them the value of the program? You talked about, being able to show the proof of who you admitted, but
Yeah.
how did you get them on board with the idea and the excitement?
I think it's just being really clear and transparent about how dedicated to mission we are. And it's pretty easy to, in my experience, to tell when somebody's being authentic about something like that. And I think that's one of the reasons I was excited to come here. And I think that shows when I'm talking to people about the school is that we are all really excited to serve that mission. And that sort of authenticity and the specifics of how we're going to do so, it seems to resonate really well with a very diverse set of community members. I mean, we've been all over this region. It's bigger than West Virginia. And people see the value. I mean, they know it's going to take time. But yeah, I think just that authenticity and that commitment to what we're trying to do is pretty popular.
Absolutely. So one last question I'll end with today is, what advice would you give anyone leading a new medical or other health professions program from inception, or somebody maybe looking to make a big change in what their school is doing, or rethink some of the things that they're doing?
I mean, I guess a couple things is make sure it's based on the mission of what you're trying to do. Like making change for change's sake, to me, doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Everything we did was intentional in relation to both our mission and sort of experience throughout our history with medical education. So I think making sure you stay true to that at every point is really key. And then the next thing is making sure you get the right team on board.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's absolutely critical. The right and it's not even necessarily specific experiences, right? We recruited a lot of people who maybe didn't have the most experience in med ed, but were the right people who were excited about the mission, right? So keeping that energy and that like dedication to what you're trying to do is just absolutely key. And then I guess the last thing is when you're trying to start something up, this is kind of cliche, but perfect is the enemy of good in a lot of cases. We wouldn't have gotten a lot of what we got done at all if we were not going to do it because it wasn't perfect. I mean, there were so many imperfect things that we had to just stand up and we're like, all right, we're moving forward. Like even admissions, right? This year, in our second year, we tweaked a number of things on our indices and had to change some stuff, but that's okay, right? And so just being okay with that uncertainty and feeling the plane lift off while you're still adding the parts is kind of scary, but you're flying. So
that's awesome. And you collected the data to make sure that you could, make it better each time. I think that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Right.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Brig, for sharing your insights with us today. To all of you, thank you for watching and listening. If you haven't subscribed to our show already, please do so and share the episode with any colleagues or peers that you think you might find it useful. And with that, we'll see you in the next episode. If you enjoyed this episode of our show, please be sure to check out the other episodes. And don't forget to subscribe. We have a new episode releasing every week.